passengers verified Carl Penhall's account, which I've just stated. This is all quite a serious crime. For example, ramming and almost sinking a boat in international waters is a much more serious crime than piracy off the coasts of Somalia, for example. It received very little notice, a few words here and there, which reflects a tacit acceptance of the principle that Israel is authorized to carry out crimes on the high seas in order to defend itself against any interference with its illegal military occupation by trying to provide some succor to the victims. Also tacitly accepted is that the Gaza Strip is occupied territory. That is, Israel has a right to impose a siege on it. Well, that lack of attention, again, makes good sense. It's all very familiar. For decades, Israel has been hijacking ships in international waters between Cyprus and Lebanon, killing passengers, kidnapping them, many of them brought to Israel, some held as hostages for a long time, imprisoned, sometimes in secret prison torture chambers, which have been exposed in Israel and Europe, but not reported here. And it's known, you occasionally see a mention of it in U.S. commentary, but never considered very serious. So there's no particular reason why this new crime should be greeted with anything more than a yawn. These regular practices are quite significant. They underscore the utter hypocrisy of the standard claim that Israel had the right to invade Lebanon once again in 2006, fifth invasion, because soldiers were captured at the border. Actually, as I say, this has been Israeli practice over many years. It's been far more extreme, intercepting ships, killing people there, capturing them as hostages. All of that is far more extreme crime than capturing soldiers at a border post. You can think what you do about that, but it doesn't rank anywhere near it. So if that justifies the invasion, which once again devastated southern Lebanon and parts of Beirut, if principles operated, you can draw your own conclusions, but fortunately they don't operate, fortunately for the U.S. and its clients. This cross-border operation of Hezbollah in 2006 was its first cross-border action of any kind in 6 years since Israel had withdrawn from southern Lebanon, where it had occupied southern Lebanon with U.S. support for 22 years in violation of Security Council resolutions. Meanwhile, Israel daily violates the border throughout these 6 years, as indeed it is doing today. And again, that's with impunity and nothing more than a yawn if it's even mentioned. Well, these new crimes that began on December 27th, they don't fit easily into any of the standard categories, except for one, namely familiarity. They do fit into that category. I've given a couple of examples, and if there's time, I'll return to more. Literally, the current U.S.-Israeli invasion falls under the category of terrorism, at least according to the U.S. official definition of the word, but that does not capture the enormity of the crime. It cannot be called aggression, and the reason is that it's taking place in occupied territory. That's accepted in the West tacitly, and it's basically beyond question. It's recognized by Israeli scholarship. So the most important case I know is the one and only comprehensive scholarly history of Israeli settlement in the occupied territories. It's been translated now into English, called Lords of the Land by Edith Zertel and Akiva Eldar. They point out that, quote, after Israel withdrew its forces from Gaza in August 2005, the ruined territory was not released for even a single day from Israel's military grip or from the price of the occupation that the inhabitants pay every day. Israel left behind scorched earth, devastated services, and people with neither a present nor a future. The settlements were destroyed, the Jewish settlements, in an ungenerous move by an unenlightened occupier, which in fact continues to control the territory and kill and harass its inhabitants by means of its formidable military might, which is exercised with extraordinary savagery, always with firm U.S. support and participation, crucial fact for us, even before the latest onslaught. The U.S.-Israeli assault on Gaza escalated in January 2006, a few months after the formal withdrawal, because Palestinians committed a real crime. They voted the wrong way in a free election, and that's a serious crime. They have to learn that, like others, easy to add examples, that there's a cost to disobeying the commands of the master, who incidentally continues to prate about his yearning for democracy without eliciting ridicule from the educated classes, which is quite an achievement of our educational and cultural system, one of many. Well, since terrorism, the terms terrorism and aggression are inadequate, some new term is needed for the sadistic and cowardly torture of people who are caged with no possibility of escape, while they're being pounded daily by the most sophisticated products of U.S. military technology, provided in the certain knowledge that this is how they'll be used. Happens to be in direct violation of U.S. law, of course, also international law, but for self-declared outlaw states, that's just another minor technicality, so there's no need to comment on it. Just how serious these weapons are remains to be completely verified. They apparently include white phosphorus, according to Human Rights Watch, which is another violation of the laws of war and who knows what else. One of the heroic volunteers in Gaza, a Norwegian doctor, Maud Gilbert, describes his sense of horror as an all-out war goes on against the civilian population of Gaza. He estimates that half the casualties are women and children. The men who are killed are also civilians by any reasonable legal standards, almost all. He says that he has scarcely seen a military casualty among the hundreds of shredded bodies, but that's in accord with the Gur Eben principles, which I mentioned, and in fact with consistent practice. His estimate is confirmed by the UN humanitarian chief, John Holmes, who informed reporters that it's a fair presumption that most of the civilians killed were women and children in a humanitarian crisis that is worsening day by day as the violence continued. Those who don't like that story can be comforted by the words of Tzipi Livni, who's the leading dove in the electoral system, who assured the world that there is no humanitarian crisis in Gaza thanks to Israeli benevolence. Like others who care about human beings and their fate, Gilbert and Holmes pleaded, in fact, for a ceasefire, but not yet. The U.S. blocked the Security Council from issuing a formal statement calling for a ceasefire. There was an official reason, which I'll quote. There was no indication that Hamas would abide by any agreement. Of all the justifications that have been offered for delighting in slaughter, this must rank among the most cynical. Of course, that was Bush and Rice. They're soon to be replaced by Barack Obama, who compassionately repeats that if missiles were falling where my two daughters sleep, I would do everything in order to stop that. He's talking about Israeli children beyond